We're back here on Liquid Lunch, and we've got Patrice McKenzie here. She's the author of this book here, Smart Mouth. Oh, look, it's in your book's invisible.
Wow.
You see that?
Wow.
Now, how do you do that? How do you get an
That's
invisible
crazy.
book like this,
That's
Patrice?
fabulous.
Isn't that awesome? Is that
I'm magic, obviously.
That's very cool.
That's very cool. We'll have to do that a few times, I think, throughout the show. That's great.
Another one of that channel's prizes.
yeah. So now, first of all, it's smart. It's called Smart Mouth, helping you communicate.
Yeah.
And why did you write this book? Why are you helping people communicate?
Well, I've been in practice I've had my own private practice for over 24 years. I've helped clients now for over 30 years in clinical practice, and the constant theme throughout my entire practice has been teaching people how to communicate. In fact, I incorporated communication skills training into the therapeutic process a number of years ago, because people would come to my office, they'd sit in my office with their partners, with their mothers, with their cousins, with their sisters, brothers, and you could see the mismatch of communication that was going on. So with a few quick and easy, down and dirty lessons in session, they all of a sudden started to communicate better, they had better relationships. So alas, I thought, why don't I put everything that I've been repeating to clients over and over and over again for 30 years, why don't I just put it in one book, in one place, in a very simple, easy to read guide.
Okay, so what was your practice? What were you doing with people?
My practice was seeing single people, recently separated people, divorced people, family members, doing family counseling for all the issues you can imagine that someone would go to a therapist about.
All right. And so, and you noticed that one of the problems when there was more than one person involved, or anybody, where there was a relationship there, it was communications issues?
Well, even in a therapeutic alliance, something that a therapist wants to develop with a client, even in their communications to me in session would be unclear or would demonstrate that they needed to learn some better communication skills.
Okay, can you give us an example of one of the things, just to give us an example of what you noticed?
A little rule. Let's just start with a little rule. Okay, so you want to go out to dinner and you go home to your family. What would you say? If you walk in the door, you see somebody, what would you say to them?
Hey guys, you want to go for dinner?
Okay, rule number one broken. Rule number one broken. You don't ask questions. You make statements. If you want to be a good communicator, you will make statements. Otherwise, you put people on the defensive. You give them the responsibility of coming up with the idea, coming up with potentially what could be a really bad idea.
Okay,
so go home and you'd say, I'd like to go out to dinner and I'd like to have Chinese food tonight. And then say, what do you think?
That's
so
fair.
You've made your statement. You have taken ownership of what you're thinking,
right,
and you've shared it, and now you give other people an opportunity to respond.
That's interesting, because I would have thought maybe that, by asking questions, you're opening it up, allowing other people to have input into the issue, whatever it might be, but you're saying start with your own.
With what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Start with that. Always share that first. So you can imagine in a couple relationship where both of them spend all of their time asking questions and never making statements to the other.
That so happens.
Right?
And
We've
we're
all
not
been
always
there.
in a position we want to make a decision at that moment, or you're not really where the other person's at, so it's hard to decide.
Exactly.
But you could start, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patrice, but you could start by saying, I'm not sure I know what I want to do this evening, but I feel like maybe doing something. How does everyone else feel?
Well,
So
what we'd want to do there is to start with what you're thinking, because everything starts with a first thought. A first thought begets an emotion, and emotions beget behaviors. That's the rule of thumb. Think, feel, behave. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to start with how you're thinking. So you're saying, I'd like to give some thought to what we can do tonight. So that's what you're thinking, right? So you want to start with that.
That's pretty simple. But when you said, and I agree with your statement, I think it makes sense to make a statement and not ask a question. Yet sometimes if people are also not listening and there is friction in the family, it could be turned around as well. It's all about what you want to do. You want to go to dinner, you want to have Chinese, although at the end you gave the choice of saying, well, what do you think? How would you deal with that kind of a situation?
Well, you always want to diffuse any confrontation. So if someone's coming back at you saying, well, it's always about you, isn't it? And I hear this in session all the time, it's all about you, isn't it? You just have to lay off, you let go, and say, I'd be really pleased to hear what you have to say. I'd really like to know what you're thinking.
That's great.
Right? Just give it back to them. It's always about mutual respect, positive regard, always respecting yourself, validating the other person. What you have to say is important to me. You don't have to talk to me right now. We can always get together at another time. It's not important that we have to talk about it or resolve it at this moment. And the book goes into how do you deal with difficult people? What is the process for having a discussion with someone with whom you're having a difference of opinion? So it covers that. It talks about having a positive self-esteem and how important it is for someone to have a positive self-esteem, a good feeling of self-worth in order to have a positive exchange with someone.
Right. And it sounds like this is for everybody, because off air we were speaking about how some of us think we're good communicators. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are. And communication is very important for me, yet when I have those little misunderstandings between family members or my partner, you think, well, I'm doing my best to be calm and speak well and think of how you're feeling, yet we're having a misunderstanding. And what kind of an advice would you give for that? Because some of us think we're okay, but we can always learn more.
Well, first of all, I'd suggest you buy my book. Equality is very important in communication. And I also talk about learning to speak another person's language. So quite often how we come across, how we present, we think is the way everybody else presents and how everybody else comes across. That's not the case, as you well know. Everybody has their own way of communicating. Our job is to better understand how they think and how they communicate and give them an opportunity to demonstrate that to you so you can clue in, so you can get a better understanding. I always say communication is not about what we're saying, it's about understanding what someone is saying to you. That's our job in communication. It's having a very clear understanding of where someone else is coming from and working as hard as you can to ensure that you have that understanding. So, you know, positive feedback, reflective listening, always touching base, making sure that the message you're receiving is the message they're trying to get across.
So when you wrote this book, who were you really thinking, or who did you have in mind? I mean, I know Erin just mentioned it's probably good for everybody, but who really specifically did you have in mind when you were writing it?
I specifically had in mind my own clients.
Okay.
That was certainly my raison d'etre for writing the book. It was for my own clients. I was fortunate enough to work with Niagara University because I actually did my master's degree from Niagara, and when I was writing the book, I went back to them.
Niagara.
Yes, and I
don't know that university.
Oh, it's right across the border.
Oh, it's across the border.
Yes.
That's why. Okay.
So I went back to my own university and I met with my professors and I talked to them about my desire to write the book. They had a brief read of the manuscript, and thankfully they suggested to me, in order to ensure that it was believable and it was authentic and that it had the credibility that I was looking for, that the book would be field tested. So the field testing occurred with two major counseling consortia in the United States. They were kind enough to volunteer to read the manuscript, to provide editorial comments, etc. It was then field tested with a number of therapists in my own community, and I gave it to a number of my clients to read and provide comment on as well. As a result of all the field testing, what came out of that was that this book isn't just for my own client group. It's also very, very good for clinicians to learn different tools and techniques in the therapeutic process
of how to communicate with
to teach the communication skills that are in the book. So I have some very, very positive testimonials from some of the people who reviewed the book, on the cover, on the back of the book. So I think it has the, it has that backing that I was looking for, that credibility that's so important when you write a book like this.
Now, would you go so far as to say that when you kind of look at your clientele over the years, that the communication is the #1 issue
Absolutely.
that they're dealing with?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if that's the #1 cause of the problem in your practice, where you're dealing with people for counseling, it's got to be causing a lot of other problems in other areas that people aren't even aware of.
I would suspect so. I wouldn't say it's the #1 problem, but I think it's a problem that definitely has to be identified and solved as part of the whole counseling process.
Now, how did we survive as a culture up until 2011?
We have guns.
Without this kind of knowledge about how to communicate. Like, how have we been communicating all this time?
Obviously, we've been getting by. We've been getting by, obviously. But I think if we're striving to have a more enriched relationships, closer relationships, if we are wanting to learn more about ourselves and others, then I think we want to put a little bit of effort into learning about how to communicate better with everyone.
Right.
Okay. So if for people who are watching this right now, what would be some of the red flags that they might be experiencing if they're really communicating badly?
Well, they wouldn't be getting along well, I think, with people with whom they are not communicating well. I think they would probably feel like somebody else is in control of the situation and that there isn't a lot of equality in the relationship. I think they would feel that perhaps they're being bossed around a bit, or they're not being heard, or like you were saying earlier, Aaron, it always boils down to you and what you want. So there would certainly be a lack of harmony in their relationships for a variety of reasons.
So this could be in family relationships or
boss and employee.
Yeah.
Boss and employee. I mean, it talks about respectful communication. So bosses want to be respectful when they're talking with their staff. Parents want to be respectful when they're talking with their children. They don't want to come down as scolding, punitive parents. They want to be, they want to provide nurturing, they want to provide guidance, they want to know how to talk with their teenage children.
So this would be good for that?
Absolutely.
For intergenerational communication?
Absolutely.
Because that's I think it's probably an eternal problem.
Yes.
Parents trying to talk to their kids.
I know. I know.
And, and they know better, and yet they're still doing this and that, right?
Well, one thing that I personally like about the book, and I've read a lot of self-help books, etc., is that the book is filled with my own case examples, with the name changed, of course. So the entire book is filled with real cases from my practice. This is who they are, this is what they presented with, these were the challenges, this is how we dealt with them, these are the new communication skills that they learned, and this was the result. So I have in the book a number of examples of parents and their children and how they're speaking together. I have bosses and employees. I have a variety of everything in the book.
Now, is there one example you can give us right now of how this kind of smart communication really made some real tangible changes?
Well, very quickly, we can talk about a parent-child example where a mom and dad didn't want to take phone messages for their daughter. They refused to get the daughter a cell phone. Now, she was up in arms about that because all of her friends, of course, had cell phones, and the parents believe that she didn't need one. But at the same time, they refused to take messages for her. So that caused a lot of grief between both parents and the daughter. It also caused grief for the daughter and all her friends at school, because they were trying to contact her, and the parents were saying, well, you'll see her tomorrow in school, you don't have to leave a message. So there was a lot of consternation around that. When the daughter finally was able to, through some communications training, go to the parents and say to them, when you choose not to take telephone messages, I'm thinking, so we come from here first, I think that you're trying to be mean to me. I think that I've done something wrong and you're trying to get back at me. I think that you think my friends aren't important. And when I think these things, I feel hurt, I feel sad, I don't feel attached to you as my mom and dad. I feel like I'm really not wanted and I don't know why you're doing this to me. So when she was able to sit down in front of her parents and say that small scenario, the parents, their jaws dropped. They were shocked that they would think that their daughter didn't think that, thought that they were trying to punish her, that she didn't belong, that her parent, or her friends were not important to them. So when she learned to speak from a place of think and feel, and her parents were able to sit openly and listen to her and understand where she was coming from, they were able to make some real headway there. And she was able to say, I'll negotiate with you. You know, if you take down their name and their phone number, that's all I ask of you. Right. I don't ask you to take the message. Just take their name or their phone number, and that's all I want. I'll go to my friends, I'll ask them not to phone 3 and 4 times a night. If they're going to phone, they phone once, they leave one message. They don't interfere with your night. So they were able to negotiate together and get through that. A very simple think and feel exercise.
And as long as we're respectful, calm, and our tone is a certain way as well, I think it just makes all the difference.
Yes, and body language makes such a difference. It's really surprising how body language affects people.
But what is it going to take? Like, is it enough for somebody to read the book, or is it something that they have to, like, are there exercises in the book? Is this something people really have to work on to change their communication habits?
Well, I think we all have to work on a lot of things. I think, you know, we're a whole population of learners, lifelong learners, and I think, yes, we do want to continue to check ourselves all the time. At the end of each chapter, there is a page that says things from this chapter that I identify with. And you can make notes, and the next page is things I'm going to start to do differently. So they're able to make a list of notes on that page. There's also a complete chart in the book that covers the whole think, feel, behave aspect, where I draw on one client's experience speaking with a number of people in her life, her ex-husband, her children, her personal trainer, her boss. And she goes through an entire exercise of this is how I think, this is how I feel, this is how I behave. And then there's a blank chart in the book so people can chart their own. We field tested that particular chart at Niagara University in the communication skills training course that they offer in their master's degree program. And this was the part of the book that they liked best, was to work on the chart.
That's amazing. And it's a lot of things we don't often think about. Even if you don't think you have an issue and you read it, it's probably going to confront you with a lot of things that we don't normally put thought into.
I would hope so. I mean, my goal was for it to be a really simple read, to be completely understandable, and to make sense. It was to make sense. A book that people would say, hey, you know, have you read this? This is kind of a neat book. I found myself in it. I was coming into Toronto on the GO train one day, and I was reading the manuscript, and I didn't know that a woman was sitting beside me and over my shoulder was also reading the book. And when we got to Union Station, the woman got up and she said to me, where do I buy this? I'm in the book. I need to buy this book. And I was, as you can well imagine, I mean, I was elated because when you're writing a book, it's all inside. Like it's just inside. And it's not until, you know, the person on the street actually gives you feedback, does it kind of become alive. And she made my year when she said that. And I said, well, I hope it's not going to take too much longer.
So the book is out now?
Yes, you can buy it on my own website, www.affirmativecounseling.com. You can buy it through chapters.ca or barnesandnoble.com.
Okay, what was that? Affirmative?
Counseling.com.
Okay.
Or chapters.ca, barnesandnoble.com.
And what about is it available in the U.S.? Well, I guess they could go on those websites, but...
Yeah, it would be on, I would imagine, and I haven't checked this out to tell you the truth, but I'm sure it would be on the iUniverse website, which is
that's the publisher?
It's in the States.
Yeah,
iUniverse is in the States, so...
well, fabulous.
There it goes.
Well, it sounds like something whose time has come. So
I hope so.
Sounds like everybody should get their hands on it and start communicating better.
I think so.
Because next year's 2012, and then it's all over. We better start now. Just because we're not communicating enough. But,
well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to come on.
Okay, Patrice,
I appreciate it.
thanks for coming here today.
Thank you.
Affirmativecounseling.com.
Thank you.
And that's great.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Well, I guess that's it for the show, Erin. So it's been a great show. This is actually the first show of the week, you know. No show that we have no show Monday. I was doing stuff Monday and Tuesday.
You were busy.
This is it. So anyway, thanks for doing this as always, and thanks everyone else. Next week is our last week. So next Wednesday will be our last Wednesday before the holidays. So we'll see you then, and we'll be back tomorrow at noon for more Liquid Lunch right here on ThatChannel.com. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Mr. Grinch, you really are a heel. You're as cuddly as a cactus, you're as charming as an eel, Mr. Grinch. You're that banana with a greasy black peel.